Morning, everyone. Yes, we've been working on guidelines for the master planning, and if I talk about we, you can see three authors here, but I also would like to mention Elena and Van, and also your intern. Sorry, I forgot the name, but there have been working several people on this, and it was a very nice cooperation. And also I want to mention the graphic designer who made really beautiful product, which you will see later. But to introduce my team, Bas is not here unfortunately, but he is the guy who made a lot of the maps and the research done. Hans, who is with us today, he is an architect, urban designer and landscape architect. I think the only one in the Netherlands who has 3 titles. But most important is that he did a lot of research on expos and horticultural expos. So he's really someone, if you want to know something about the history of expos, talk to Hans. And myself, I'm a landscape architect and I was the head of design of the Floriade 2012 in Venlo. So I have some experience from the practical side, I can say. Why did we want this plan? Why a master planning thing? We already had the organizer's guide for international horticultural exhibitions. I think an excellent piece of work that is guiding you through the whole process of making a good expo. But we got a lot of questions at AIPH. Can you tell us a little bit more about the master planning process? So this is in fact an addition to this guide that is already existing, but more in depth into the master planning process. And then there is always a lot of discussion about what is a master plan. And I think the most important thing is that it's a development vision, so it's not a complete plan that can be executed. It's more the first steps into it. And the program of requirements is elaborated in a spatial plan. So there is already a program of requirements, and this is the first initial spatial elaboration of that. So it's not about the details, it's about the big scale and the big plan. And we made a kind of checklist. I don't want, I will not read them on loud, but you can see them and you will find them also in the booklet. But we made a checklist of the things that are part of it. And you can see that it goes from things that are already there, like archaeology, cultural, historical elements that you want to keep, to all the new things that you have to add. But also, for example, the land ownership situation, which is also important to consider in the beginning. Then also some things are not part of the master plan, and that's mainly the smaller and the detailed things. So don't worry about that, they will come later. After you have set your master plan, you can detail all the things that you need, but you don't have to include them into the master plan. Because if you do that, then you might lose the big scale, but also you might use a lot of time before you can finish your master plan. Something that is really important is that you have the Expo, most of the time an event of 180 days, but there is also a period after the Expo. And AIPH thinks it's really important to think about your legacy already during the master planning phase. It's because that's more sustainable if you use your Expo design as the background of your further development, but it's also a very good chance to kickstart your legacy. So if you, for example, want to make a new urban quarter and you are using your Expo to kickstart this, it really help you. It will really help you. And to show you some examples of this, Hans has been diving into the history of the Floriades, the horticultural expos, A1 expos in the Netherlands that are every 10 years. And we will start in 1982 in Amsterdam. And you can see this is the design that was at that time made for the Floriade. And the same area today is still used as a park. It's very interesting, for example, the old parking place is nowadays a camping site. So if you look at the path structure, I think you will find 80 to 90% of the infrastructure, you will find it back today. And you can see as this picture that it's a place that is very much used and people really like it. It's a very popular place in Amsterdam to go. The second example is 10 years later. It's in Zoetermeer. There the Floriade, so this is the Expo design, was the kickstart of an urban quarter that you can see here, but a very green one. So you can see a lot of, for example, the circle here and this green part. You can find it back nowadays. So people really love to live in this area because it's a very green urban neighborhood. And you can see that, well, a lot of the old infrastructure is used in the new structure. And even some pavilions, like this small one, are still there today and can be used by the people who live there. Then 2002, that was close to Amsterdam in Haarlemmermeer. And today this area is used as an event area. It's also a public park, but a public park that is hosting a lot of events. So again, this is the design for the Expo, and you can see that it's still all here. Here's the lake, for example, and this is the same lake as you see here. You can see there are really big events, and some pavilions are still there, and they are used for catering during those events. So again, a very good after use of this area. And then the one that I've been working on in Venlo in 2012. You can see here the design for the Expo. This is the master plan for the after use, which is a business park. And although we had a bad start because of the crisis in that period, now they are starting to build a lot of offices in this area. So finally, it's getting its final destination. The first part of your of master planning is not only the project master plan, it's a process. And the first part of this process is the feasibility study. And this feasibility study can also be used as a selection of a location. So you might probably do a feasibility study on more locations. For example, in Thailand we have done this. There were 2 locations and we have been looking for which one was most suitable for an expo. And this feasibility study should not be a very in-depth study. It can be a quick scan on some of the issues that you can see here. But this will give you a good insight about the potentials of the area and the suitability of it. After you have done this quick scan and you have come to a specific site, you can start making your strategic framework. And this is going more in depth. So you will do a lot of research on the site to get all the information that is needed for the master planning. And I think it's very important to put a good attention on this, because if you skip one of these things, it will take more time afterwards. So taking enough time during the strategic framework phase is very important. For example, if you don't do your research on ecology, you can later on get troubles with some specific protected species, for example. If you find them later on and your plan is already finished. For example, in Almere there was a beaver living there, and because we knew about this, we could plan around his territory. And it didn't stop us developing. There are some examples of the strategic framework, so you can see that it's really on a high level, so it's not going into details at all. This is, for example, the topography. You know, the Netherlands are very flat, maybe you have been there, but we have some little hills, so we were very proud to show them on this map. that we have our small hills, the Dutch mountains. This is a map of the existing green structure. There were a lot of forest, but with different kind of planting. So the different green colors show the different kind of plantings that were there, without going into details. Another part that is really important is sustainability. We have been talking about this morning already, and of course AIPH wants to meet the sustainability needs of today, because very often we are questioned if an expo of 180 days can be sustainable at all. But we think that it could be the opposite. It is really kickstarting something that can be very sustainable and more green than a normal development. And the question that you have to ask yourself is, how will we pass this expo sites to our grandchildren and our children? And I think answering that question is really important. And of course, AIPH has a sustainability strategy with 5 important points. And we are very often using this web, but you can also use other methods if you want. But this map is, for example, showing on which level you want to contribute to one of the 5 themes. So not everything has to be excellent. Of course, it's nice if you can do everything excellent, but in practice you see that some points can be excellent and other can be very good. But you should never go under the line, because we think it's a no-go to skip one of those 5 points. Then another question that was asked to us when we were trying to find all the information for this little booklet is they said, okay, you have to be very careful that you're with your Western, because I'm from Europe, with your Western view, you don't write a booklet or a blueprint for Western expos. And I think it's really important to tell you that is absolutely not what we want. We want to cherish local design traditions and culture. So also in the booklet you will find examples of historical gardens and landscapes that can be inspiration for your master plan. It doesn't mean that you have to make traditional design. It can be very temporary design if you want, but please use your local traditions to make these designs. We really don't want to see the same everywhere. It's really nice if you travel around the world and meet and go to several expos that you can see that you are in a different region. So this is absolutely not a blueprint for Western design. Then another important thing is experience design. Probably you have heard about the experience economy. Nowadays it's not about commodities or products or services, but people are willing to pay for an experience. And that's also a good reason why expos, I think, are still a very good way to get people enhanced with your product. Very often people say that the expo is dead because before we were always showing innovative products, and nowadays people can find these innovative products on websites or other stuff. But they forget that an expo is a place where you can really offer someone an experience, and it's very difficult to do that on a website. So I think that expos are very alive and a very good way to get people involved and really get them attached to your business. And there are a few important domains, as we call them: amusement, education, escape from daily life, and aesthetics, that will contribute to experience. So if you can put those things into your expo, then people get a better experience, and it's also better for the promotion of the horticultural sector. And I think it's not very difficult, because if you look at this, I think you will find many of them in your design. For example, education, people learn a lot about the importance of green. And it's much more difficult, for example, to put education in an amusement park. Like Disney always has a problem how to get education into their parks. But for us it's quite easy, I think. Well, this is a definition of experiences made by Pine and Gilmore. Probably you know them. It's two professors from the Harvard University in the United States who has described the principles behind the experience economy in a fantastic book. I think it's very good to read it if you are working on an expo. But they say that experiences are events that engage the individual in a personal way. So each person gets a different experience. That's also very good to know. There is no common experience, it's very personal. And I think you all know what are good and what are bad experiences. For example, if I go to an expo and I have been in a traffic jam for 10 kilometers, I have to wait 2 hours before I can get in, and on my way I see a lot of dirt around the road. It's not a good start of the day. People are already stressed before they come in. But all these things you can think about. You can, for example, think about your mobility. This morning we heard a very good example of it. You can also think of, okay, if people have to wait, how can I make waiting more interesting? Can I already show something, or can they listen to music, or maybe they are waiting in a very beautiful environment and it doesn't harm people to wait. And of course this should never happen into your parks. And good experiences, there are also nice examples. For example, if kids are really involved in doing something, so they not only may look at something, for example, a cooking workshop, but if they are involved in the cooking, if they can cook themselves, they get a real good experience. They will tell other people. I've been to, for example, the Floriade, and I learned to work with vegetables, and for the first time in my life I liked vegetables. And we heard these stories after Floriade. Also shows and parades are very good, and we have very colorful material with our plants. We can do things like this on a very good way. And also your whole catering. If the food on an expo is good, and if people had a nice lunch that is also not too expensive, they will tell others that this is really a good place to go to. So experiences are a really important part of your master planning. What is also important is that if you are master planning, you don't go too fast to the solutions. Because a solution is only working if it is the solution for something. So that's why we always like to start at the why. So why do you want an expo? Where do you believe in? What is your purpose? Then the second question you have to ask yourself is how do you want to achieve this? So what makes you special? What sets you apart from other destinations, for example, in your country? If people can spend a certain amount of money on their free time, why will they choose for your expo? And then the last question is then, what do you offer? So which experiences and services are you going to offer? And when you're talking about experience design, it's also very important that you start with clarifying your objectives. So who are you building for? Who are your target groups? So this morning, for example, I saw that Qatar had very clear overview of who their target groups are, and I think that's a really good thing to do. And then what are the objectives for each target groups? Because for business-to-business visitors you have other targets than, for example, for family with young kids. Out of these objectives, you will establish functions. So which functions are needed? For example, for business to business, you need a hall like this where you can come together with people. You need probably a little bit more upscale restaurant. While for families, you need playgrounds and you need places where people can change diapers and stuff like that. So it's really looking at the target groups and then the functions that you need. And then from there you get the requirements. How big should the toilets be? How wide have the paths to be? But it's step by step. And then when you have settled this, you can determine characteristics. What kind of feeling do you want to give to your clients? Should they be in a in a more tropical environment? Should it be modern? You can make mood boards, for example. It's a very good way to show what kind of characteristics you want to give to your audience. And then finally you start designing solutions, and it's very good not to stay at one alternative, but to make several, so you can compare them and which one is attributing most to your objectives and to your requirements. So it's very good to make a few sketches and then discuss together which one fits best. And to show you a little bit how this works, we have made an imaginary horticultural expo, and the theme of this expo is healing landscapes. So we want to show the audience how important green is for your mental and physical health. And we have a target group, one of the target groups, of course. There are many target groups, but this is one that we have that we want to show. It's Nick with his family, his wife and his daughter. Nick is 35 years, he's doing businesses, he likes healthy food and green environments, and his ideal out is a day out with his family, and it should also be a little bit educational, because he wants that his daughter comes back with new experiences, so that's really important. He has an average income and likes to travel with public transport, and he's also checking reviews at social media to see if his money is spent well. Well, you already see, if you make a definition like this, you can see that, for example, public transport is important. So again, I refer to the story of this morning, but also social media. So, for example, the experience they have now in Qatar with fake news, it's very difficult because people are watching it. And yeah, I can understand that this is not what you want. What do we want to deliver? So we have answered a few questions, and you will find those questions in the report. We have answered a few questions for Nick. So Nick will remember that vegetables are healthy after visiting us. Nick will feel relaxed after visiting us. If Nick is asked about a healthy environment, he will think about our expo. And he will also tell his friends to go to this expo because it was really entertaining and his daughter has learned something. Nick also understands the contribution of horticulture to healthy living after he has been with us. And the most important thing is that Nick will change his eating habits after he has been here with our expo. Because the most important thing you can reach with an experience is that people get changed. So if we can reach this, if he's really changing his habits, then we have done a real good job. Nick and his family should understand that horticulture contributes a lot to health. He will remember our experience because of all the flowers and the delicious food, and our experience should change Nick's view on health and the role of horticulture to it. So if we want to achieve this, we have some objectives, and this is just a very short scheme. If you make a real expo, this scheme will be really big, but as an example we make a small one. So Nick wants an attractive day for his family, and he says that entertaining is important, but also education. And for entertaining, we know that he wants to meet other families because it's important that they can share ideas with each other, and he wants a high level of entertainment because he is really spoiled already. He's used to a high level of entertainment, and he also wants to find it on our expo. If we look at education, he wants edutainment. So he wants his daughter to be educated, but not in the classroom. It has to be entertaining and educating at the same time. And it has to match with the interest, of course, of his family. We want to transform Nick into a satisfied guest. And we have three processes. We will welcome him, we will give him a nice day, what we call the main show process. and at the end of the day we will wave him goodbye and thank him for his visit. And as soon as he comes in, we will greet him, maybe in person, maybe with a sign that is greeting him, but he will feel immediately welcome at our site. We also will provide an attractive and relaxed area. He doesn't have to search for the toilets because he can easily find them. He wants a cup of coffee after sitting in the bus for 1 hour, and he can easily find it at our entrance area. Now, the main show, you can see all the things that are part of an expo, and at the farewell process, we will thank him, maybe again personal, maybe with a sign that is saying goodbye to him, but also we will provide souvenirs that will, so his daughter can buy something that will make her remember the beautiful day at our expo. And when we look at one specific thing that is coming out of this function tree, for example, provide the coffee bar, you can see that this can easily lead to a requirement. We can now make a smart definition of this coffee bar on a master planning level. So we can say how big it is, how many capacity we need, what it may cost, when the design must be finished, so we can really make smart requirements out of this process. And after this we can make a mood board. How should this coffee bar and this environment look like? This is an example of a fruit forest at the Floriade in Venlo. We made this mood board to show what kind of atmosphere we wanted there. And then we can start generating alternatives. We can start to design the entrance area, and we can come up with several alternatives, and we can see which one fits best to our requirements. So the whole master planning is not about going into details, but keeping at the high level. And what we often use is this layer approach. So, for example, we first look at the bottom and the water system, because we can change them with technical meanings, but very often this technical solutions will be the problems for the next phase. So it's better to look where are the low and wet parts, for example, and we don't put the buildings in the wet parts, but we put them on the a little bit more dry parts. The second layer is the network. So on top of this substratum layer, we will build our network of roads, but also the underground infrastructure. And on top of that, we put the pavilions and the gardens. And this is the whole process that we go through. So we start with our first research, our quick scan and our framework on the image of the neighborhood, the characteristics, the heritage. Then we look at the water management. Do we have areas that can flood? Do we have probably areas that need water in the summer, that we have to, where we have to put irrigation? We also look at biodiversity, because all the qualities that are there already, we want to keep them. But if we can add something to biodiversity, we should also do that. Then we start working on the network and the transportation, and then in the end the various uses and the public realm. And during this whole process we keep an eye on our experience design, but also on the adapting and the refunctioning. So if we do this process for our 180 days expo, we always keep in mind that after the expo there will be an after use, and that everything we have done here will be also useful in the period after the expo. We have also looked at some layouts, because the layout, the network of the expos is very important. How do you get all those people to the right places in your expo? Because you want to avoid them walking behind each other, and some areas are very crowded while other areas are empty. So we have been looking at different kind of layouts. For example, this one was used at the Floriade in Zoetermeer. It's the ghost food. This morning we saw the example of Japan, I think, which is more the scenic walk model. Yeah, so you can see that there are several in Dubai last year. The Expo had this model, so you have one entrance with a place where everybody gathers, and from there you can go into the several team areas. In Almere we had this one, and I can show it on the next picture. So it was a grid system that was hosting, and I think they all are right. Some have some pros and some cons, but yeah, you just have to think about it. What fits best to your size, to your Expo site. And then after the master planning, you're not finished yet, of course. There are still some other things to do. You have to do your final design works, maybe planting schemes, wayfinding, public design. Of course, it's also very important, but not during the master planning phase itself. You just stick to the higher level, and all those details are coming afterwards. But if you have a good master plan, it will be much easier to do all this detail work afterwards, because you have a very strong framework that is guiding you through the next phases. I have already mentioned that this is just a summary of the whole story, and you can see here this code. It's bringing you to the site of AIPH that is showing the whole plan. So please have a look at it. You can see that it was really beautiful designed. I'm very happy with it, and yeah, I hope it will help you through your process, and we will be very glad also to help you with this process. Thank you very much.